out of here, you parasite! The eldest son's wife always looked down on me. Though we lived together, I believed she wouldn't take me for granted. After all, I work and also do the household chores. Yet I never imagined she would say such awful things to me. Desiring help, I looked towards my son sitting on the sofa, but he chuckled and said,
"I don't need a mother like you."
Upon hearing this, I inadvertently glanced at my son's wife. She was smirking as if saying, "Serves you right." Could it be she influenced my son to say such things? Regardless, it became clear that I couldn't rely on them. I felt utterly drained. Living with this couple, a peaceful future seems unlikely for me. Exactly. I'd rather not have a son and daughter-in-law like them. Upon hearing me, they burst out laughing as if I was just being a sore loser. Little do they know, it won't last. My name is Catherine. Since my husband passed away 5 years ago, I've been living a relaxed life in our longtime home, working from home. Then, about 6 months ago, my eldest son Andrew and his fiancée Emily arrived here. Without a proper introduction, Emily, who had already become my daughter-in-law by registering their marriage, said, "The truth is, I'm already pregnant."
So, we wanted to get married quickly.
On our way here, we saw the city office.
We've submitted our marriage registration.
I felt they were doing things out of order, but Andrew seemed happy. With a joyous face, he said,
"Thus the situation. We're now a married couple. Please, don't bully my wife, okay?"
I can't believe it. To say I'd bully someone. Confused, I looked at the two of them. Both Andrew and Emily spoke as if there was no issue, without showing any concern about making such an important decision without consulting me or other family members. Facing their carefree attitudes, I couldn't even voice my thoughts. Marriage isn't just about the two of you, deciding without discussing with others. Besides, if she's already pregnant, there aren't many options other than marriage. They are both adults, and I believe they will manage the upbringing of their child together as a couple. With that in mind, I decided not to say anything about their sudden marriage registration and began to sip my tea. Suddenly, Andrew spoke with urgency.
"There's something else. Moving companies are coming to this house tomorrow. I asked them to meet with you."
Emily was nodding in agreement beside him. Not grasping the situation, I asked, "What? Why would movers come to our house? Are you two moving in here?" Both of them nodded, saying,
"Yes, exactly,"
as if it was a given.
"We've scheduled the move for tomorrow. Could you help tidy up the rooms?"
They continued, as if I had already agreed to their moving in. Of course, I was shocked by their sudden marriage announcement, but the fact that they planned to move into this house without any consultation left me speechless. After all, today was the first time I met Emily, and I knew nothing about her. Furthermore, my son Andrew moved out when he entered college, and since then, we hadn't lived together. Looking back, I recall that during his college years, Andrew, who lived on his own with the money I sent him, rarely returned home. He would show up occasionally during New Year's, but to think that he would suddenly live here from tomorrow? It's understandable that I'm distressed, but for some reason they both seem to think I'll accept living together without issue. I don't mind at all living with my mother-in-law. It's absolutely fine with me. Despite Emily's nonchalant remark, the idea of living under the same roof with someone I met today is unimaginable to me. Even if you say that, it's so sudden.
Considering I'm the eldest son, I feel obligated to take over this house. If we're eventually going to live together to take care of you, Mom, wouldn't it be better to start living together sooner so we can get used to each other?
Leaning over the table, Andrew asserted his stance. Perhaps during the time he seldom came home, he had matured. To me, there's another child named Lucy. She's Andrew's older sister. If he feels responsible as the eldest son to look after his mother even though he has an elder sister, should I be glad for his growth? As Andrew mentioned, it might be better to start living together now if we're eventually going to. Because if they keep paying rent elsewhere until then, they could save that money by living here from the start. That way they can save money and I can live at ease. Considering this, I consented to them moving in. The moment I agreed, Andrew and Emily started touring the house.
We'll use the entire second floor.
Please move everything downstairs and clean it up.
After setting their boundaries, they promptly left. Sighing, I thought, couldn't they at least help me with the initial moving? Cleaning by tomorrow seemed impossible for me alone, so I called someone for assistance. That someone was Lucy, Andrew's sister. Being the eldest daughter, she was dependable, especially in such times. If I asked her for a favor, she would almost certainly accept. Recently, she started going to the gym, gaining extra strength, perfect for moving items downstairs. As expected, Lucy agreed immediately over the phone and was at my place within 30 minutes. Together, we moved the items from the second floor, and while cleaning, I narrated Andrew bringing Emily as his fiancée, their sudden decision to move in, and the rush for tomorrow. Are you sure about this, Mom? Haven't you been overwhelmed by Andrew's momentum? Normally, you'd get to know your son's fiancée before deciding to live together, unless there's some pressing circumstance. Although Lucy was concerned, I was ready to accept Andrew's feelings as the eldest son. Still, when I explained, Lucy's face showed she wasn't convinced. Responsibilities as the eldest son? Is this something Andrew said? She looked unsatisfied. I said, I only truly knew Andrew up until he was in high school. Being an adult now and facing the challenges of society might have changed him. Upon hearing my words, Lucy vehemently shook her head, clearly disagreeing. That's impossible. If he became a sensible person after facing the harshness of society, he wouldn't suddenly decide to move in without any discussions or even getting married without informing the family. Mom, are you sure Andrew and his partner aren't deceiving you? Despite her words, deep down as a mother, I wanted to trust my son Andrew and the woman he chose. When I expressed my feelings, it seemed Lucy grudgingly understood where I was coming from. In return, she asked me for a favor, given my trust in Andrew. I agreed, not realizing that this decision would have a significant impact later on. With Lucy's help, we finished cleaning the second floor, and the next day the moving process began. Andrew and Emily arrived, and I absent-mindedly watched as their belongings were carried to the second floor. It's best to leave moving to the professionals after all. After the moving was done, and while Andrew and Emily were unpacking in their room, I began to boil some noodles. I wanted to have a small celebration meal with them for living together. To my surprise, Emily, who had finished unpacking earlier, came down to the kitchen and said,
Why are you making noodles? We just moved in. You could have prepared something more special.
Stunned, I responded, I thought something light would be best given the tiring day. But she retorted,
When you're tired, you need something hearty like meat. Don't you understand? Our values are so different.
Then she looked up at the second floor and called out,
Andrew, I want some meat. How about going for barbecue? I saw a place nearby earlier.
Despite my efforts in making noodles, she was suggesting going out for a barbecue. Hold on, I'm making noodles right now.
I'm not in the mood for noodles today. Why don't you just eat what you've made?
Andrew seemed to be in the mood for barbecue rather than the noodles. Before I knew it, he quickly came downstairs but never appeared in the kitchen I was in. The two of them left without a word. The noodles I prepared were for 3 people. There's no way I could eat all of it by myself. Thinking that I would eat it tomorrow, I felt increasingly anxious, wondering, how is our living together going to be from now on? I started losing confidence in whether this arrangement would work out. The main reason for my concern was because Emily, who treated me as if I was old, would never respect me just because I am her mother-in-law. I didn't intend to act high and mighty as a mother-in-law, but her attitude was questionable. Emily's demeanor wasn't appropriate for someone I'd be sharing a roof with. When I discussed this with my eldest daughter, Lucy, she advised me to consider discontinuing our living arrangement sooner rather than later. Nevertheless, Emily was the only one who showed this disrespectful attitude. Andrew hadn't said anything bad to me, so I still believed that if the three of us could sit down and talk it out, everything would be fine. Life afterwards was quite challenging. Andrew proposed that we should create a joint bank account for monthly expenses, as he found it tedious to calculate individual contributions each month. Emily and I both accepted Andrew's proposal. However, a month later I found out that the couple was rather careless. I had left it up to them to decide how much they would contribute, based on their respective incomes. But when I checked the account, to my surprise they had only deposited a combined total of about $200. Andrew contributed $150 and Emily only $50. From my perspective, this amount was undeniably low. When I brought this up to Andrew, he said,
I thought that would be enough.
And,
Besides, it's not just me who's contributing. Emily is too.
he even accused me of being greedy. When I tried discussing this with Emily, she shouted,
You probably don't earn that much, do you? I don't want to be lectured on money by an elderly person with a low income.
I felt helpless in the face of her response. Even when she calmed down and I tried explaining that my income wasn't that low, she said,
You're just at home all day working on your computer, right? I bet you don't earn much. Don't rely on our money just because you don't earn enough.
She wouldn't listen to my side of the story. Furthermore, I had a feeling that behind my back, Emily and Andrew were bad-mouthing me. Between the two of them, they seemed to have formed the impression that I'm just trying to mooch off them because I'm supposedly short on money. The two wouldn't listen to what I had to say, and over time I began to feel as though my place within my own home was disappearing. And then a shocking incident occurred. When I checked the bank account we used for living expenses, the balance for that month had dropped to $0. Usually after Andrew and Emily transferred their shares, I would top up whatever amount was still needed. I had planned to transfer the necessary amount for living expenses, assuming that Andrew and Emily had already deposited their shares. Just the day before, both of them had said they'd completed their transfers. Could it be that each of them thought the other had deposited money and therefore felt they didn't need to? Without making any deposit, I returned home and asked them, Hey, did you both deposit the money for this month's expenses? If you haven't, we need to decide on a fixed amount for our monthly contributions. To this, Emily responded in a raised voice.
How dare you ask for money when you're broke yourself? Go somewhere else, you freeloader.
Her manner of speaking was truly out of line. Despite not contributing a single penny, how could she act so high and mighty? Seeking some support, I turned to my son, who was seated on the sofa. But he started chuckling and said,
Emily's right, you know. What kind of mother asks her son and daughter-in-law for money? I don't need a mother like that either.
It was astonishing that Andrew, who also hadn't contributed a single penny towards the living expenses, had the audacity to say such things. Either way, I realized it was futile to argue with them. I felt utterly drained. It became clear that as long as I continued living with these two, a peaceful future for me was out of the question. Exactly, I said. I don't need a couple like you either. Misunderstanding my words as sour grapes, the two of them laughed loudly. About 30 minutes after I began packing up my things, the doorbell rang. Wondering who was at the intercom when Andrew opened the front door, he was greeted by a red-faced Lucy.
Huh? Sis? What are you doing here?
Seeing his sister with an expression that looked as terrifying as a demon, Andrew was so taken aback that he unintentionally fell on his buttocks. Lucy had always been stern with Andrew since they were kids. So even as an adult, she seemed like a scary figure to him. Perhaps it was the sight of his normally stern sister suddenly looking so fierce that caused him to be so startled. What's the meaning of this? Do you even realize what you've done? Just when I thought you had the audacity to suddenly move in, Now you're trying to kick out your own mother after only 3 months of living together? It seems that Andrew thought he could handle any situation given his older age, but when he faced with his intimidating sister, he began making excuses. However, the lies he began to spew were so outrageous that they were almost unbelievable.
Look, I said we should continue living together, but Mom said she wanted to live alone. And it seems like this house is too big for Mom, so considering we're having a baby soon, we thought it'd be best if we take over this spacious house.
Enough with the excuses. I know you're lying.
What? You don't believe me, sis? You don't know anything about our situation.
No, I see everything because of the surveillance cameras. I know all about the antics of you two, the worst couple ever. Yes, that's right. Back then, before Andrew and Emily moved in, the favor that Lucy had asked me for was, in fact, the installation of a surveillance camera. She pleaded, out of concern, to at least install a surveillance camera, and I readily agreed. Although the camera was only in the living room, it seems it captured instances where Andrew and Emily were speaking ill of me when I was at work. Since Emily mostly left the housework to me, the two probably never noticed the camera's presence. Through that surveillance camera, Lucy seemed to have heard even the private conversations they had when alone. This camera also had a microphone. When I wasn't around, it picked up their conversations like,
"This is our own home. Let's get rid of Mom.
Soon we'll be able to get rid of our mother-in-law.
If she leaves, we wouldn't have to give her money anymore."
It seems we can have a more relaxed life.
All their discussions were exposed.
What? What the hell? You've been watching us with that camera? That's too much.
I installed the camera in an obvious place, thinking you might notice it. So does that mean you never even cleaned since you didn't see it? You rely on Mom for everything and plan to take over the house? How much of a failure can you be as a son? No matter how much Andrew tried to argue with Lucy, she showed no signs of backing down. In fact, the more aggressive Andrew became, the more he appeared to be terrified. As Andrew tried to argue in a frail voice saying,
"But Mom, you're demanding money from us."
I, who was packing my bags, added with a laugh. Even though as a couple you didn't transfer a single penny for this month's expenses, you dare say I was demanding money? Fundamentally, even if I asked, nothing would come from you two. Both probably didn't know neither had deposited a single cent, but Andrew and Emily, realizing neither had contributed, exchanged glances. Furthermore, when I dropped a passbook for a bank account I no longer needed in front of them, they hurriedly picked it up and checked the transactions. The passbook showed that both of them had deposited less than $400 every month. The remaining expenses were all paid by me. Especially for this month, it was recorded that neither had deposited a single dollar. Upon seeing this, the two of them seemed to have assumed that the other was depositing money. They exclaimed,
"I thought Emily was the owner of a salon. I thought since Emily was paying the living expenses, I didn't need to deposit any money. Why is there so little deposited?"
Didn't Andrew say he's about to get a promotion because of his credibility within the company? I thought Andrew would handle the finances. What on earth is this?
At this point, Lucy let out a heavy sigh and spoke. What's the matter with you two? Andrew can't really do his job. He's been stuck as a regular employee for ages. He might even be transferred to an inconsequential department soon. Emily, you aren't even a hairdresser, are you? You seem to be working part-time, right? Lucy, who had set up the surveillance camera and being watching Andrew and Emily, seemed to have become suspicious and apparently did some research on them. However, with just a little digging, Lucy found out things that even the two of them didn't seem to be aware of. They reacted with,
"What are you talking about?"
Regular employee and sidelined? Where's the promotion?
"Not even a real hairdresser?"
They both realized that they'd been lying to each other, leading to a heated argument on the spot. As for me, I told them, I've decided to let go of this house. It'll be handed over by the end of next month. Please, clear it out." I then left the house. Hearing this, both of them frantically said,
"Wait, I'll come with you."
And, "Take me with you too."
but Lucy, with a stern expression, stood between me and them. She firmly said, "What are you talking about? I'll live with Mom. I have no intention of supporting senseless people like you." Lucy shouted at them. Seeing Lucy's fierce demeanor, both of them seemed to lose their nerve and were frozen in fear. Lucy and I turned our backs on them and walked towards the apartment where she lived. From then on, the two couldn't continue living in the house I planned to sell. Moreover, they didn't seem to have any money left to move somewhere else. Out of options, Emily had to humbly approach her parents. Emily's parents are farmers, and it turned out they were willing to take both of them in. Now, having been forced out of their current jobs, both of them seem to be helping with the family business from dawn to dusk. It seems that the living expenses for the two of them are directly deducted from their salaries, so a lie like when I said I was contributing to living expenses probably wouldn't fly. I once received a message from Emily's parents saying, "We won't let them act spoiled anymore. We will make sure they reform completely under our roof." With such assurance, I can leave the two of them in their care without any worries. For the unborn child, it might be more comforting to live not only with that couple but also with other family members. By the way, I am currently living with Lucy, just the two of us women, enjoying every moment without having to walk on eggshells around each other.